If you're an Aries or you have an Aries in your life, this is the video for you. Today, we're going to explore all the essential oils that every Aries and those that have to deal with the Aries need in their life. Today, joining me, of course, is Liz. How are you today, Liz?
Well, I'm feeling like this might be illuminating about me because I am Aries rising. And sometimes your Aries, your rising sign is more you than your sun sign, isn't it? So I think
Mm.
people will get to see probably stuff about me that perhaps they didn't know before.
Yeah, I think for absolutely everyone, understanding the Aries energy is really beneficial. I remember once doing a reading for someone who was a Libran, that was their sun sign, but didn't feel like a Libran. And when we actually pulled up their birth chart, and it's really easy to do that these days, there's websites like astro.com that you can just jump on, pop your details in there, and it will come up. And pretty much all of her other planets were in Scorpio. Now, the Scorpio energy is very different to the Libran, and that would explain why, as a Libran, she wasn't totally relating to it because she was pretty much Scorpionic energy, eight parts out of 10. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a chart quite similar to that. As you know, a lot of my planets are in Gemini. And Gemini's communication, isn't it? So yeah, I think quite often I don't feel like a Cancerian at all.
Yes. Yep. No, I can see components of both within you as I've got to know you over the years for sure. But let's dive in and have a little bit of a look at Aries. So we have different approaches. I like to look at it from a more of a personality base, whereas you look at medical astrology. So I'm going to kind of talk us through some of the ones I find are really good oils for managing, bringing out the good in an Aries, maybe simmering down the bad as well. And we're going to journey through all the different zodiac signs in the coming weeks as well. So why are we starting with Aries? Aries is known as being the first sign of the zodiac. One really interesting thing when it comes to looking at astrology is that you can approach each zodiac sign as representing 7 years of our life. Because Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, we look at then the ages 0 to 7. And this really kind of explains no matter how old you are as an Aries or how old the Aries is that you're dealing with, you're always like a bit of a child. And that can be good and bad. So let's look at some of the good attributes of that. This real playful, real big hearted, open, willing to give anything a try, fearless in that type of way. You know, when we look at a child, they're always doing things that are a little bit crazy and reckless. Why? Because they don't know that it's dangerous. And you'll find often that Aries are big risk takers and will really love to dive into different things. Now, an oil that helps to bring out this playful kind of energy is green mandarin. Now, lots of citruses are really great for our fire signs, which is Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. But what I love about green mandarin as a citrus is it's the only oil we really get from an unripe fruit or from a young fruit. And so green mandarin is a really beautiful one for capturing that joyous energy of an Aries. So I love it in their diffuser. They can also put it on their heart chakra and it helps them to really bring out that green mandarin really helps us to not be fearful. It helps us to have that playful, fearless kind of approach to life, which is really great in an Aries. It also really helps with being non-discriminatory. And a child will play with absolutely anyone. It doesn't matter what color their skin is or how much that their parents make or that type of thing. They just love everyone. And bringing that attribute out of Aries and working with green mandarin can be really, really beautiful. So that's a good one for them. Now, I like to pair that. Now, you can work with these together or separately, but ginger's amazing as well. Ginger, for me, is probably one of the most empowering essential oils we have in the world, especially energetically. One beautiful activity you can do with ginger is just by breathing it in, it increases the chi or the life force within you. And if you need that just to get through your day, that can be really beneficial. But also, if you're doing any creative visualization or any spell work or magic, raising the more energy within you by inhaling the ginger will then give you more energy to send out into the world to transform into what you want to manifest because of that really empowering energy. And Aries always have a lot of energy to give when they need to kind of bring that to the next level and bring that boldness out. Ginger is a really beautiful one to work with. So I love those two for Aries in helping to bring out their best, to help them shine and be, not courageous, fearless, and really adventurous. They're really beautiful too.
I love that. And do you see any situations where Aries people are afraid? Because I think that each sign has their own kind of wounding. So you're talking about how fearless they are. If an Aries were to be frightened of something from an archetypical point of view, what's your thoughts on that?
Hmm. I would say probably, a lot of whenever anything happens in that area sign, it's very much to do with the self. So, anything that might impact the pride or an attack on themselves or who they are, can be really quite detrimental to them. And that's where ginger is such this great empowering oil that whenever something internally, kind of tackles you, it's a root or a rhizome oil, so it grounds you back in your core power and allows you to kind of trudge on or to fight through that in that way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely right. From my point of view, I'd have thought that Aries people don't like to sit still, like
Mm,
like the way that you can't keep toddlers still.
yes.
And so in a way, when if I were looking at oils for an Aries person, I'd almost look at it therapeutically and say, right, these are the things I want to bring down rather than bring up, if that makes sense. So it's really interesting that you want to encourage things out. For me, I would say the worst things about my Aries nature, of which I am extremely Aries, are my temper, but also my ability to speak first, then think later. And also the way that I career into things. I think I've thought things through a lot, but I can be extremely impulsive. And I'm married to somebody who's completely the opposite way. It's so frustrating sometimes that he has to create maps upon maps upon maps of things before we do anything. So, so from that point of view, the Aries nature is kind of almost requires cooling, and I would call on cooling oils for Aries quite often, because if we think about somebody's zodiac sign, if you are like an Aries zodiac sign, you're born with a disposition towards this nature. And this nature, of course, is the nature of Mars, the warrior god. That's how it was seen in olden times. And as you say, it's a fire sign. It's also a cardinal sign. So the cardinal signs are the change makers. So everything about Aries kind of requires almost like a chain to go. Just wait for a moment. Wait. So there's an old expression that I think I'm going to attribute it to Plutarch. I don't know if it was Plutarch, but I think it was. And he said, Venus tempers Mars. And actually, you would see that in the story of Antony and Cleopatra, that Cleopatra dressed herself as Venus, as the perfect uh, consort to Mars, and he modelled himself as Mars. And this idea that the two have this perfect marriage. And so for Aries signs, what can be really beautiful are oils that are ruled by Venus. And for the most part, those, of course, are the flowers. And so we have this beautiful cooling nature of rose that says, just settle, just be gentle, don't be rigid, just soften. Also, of course, my favourite chamomile, they just go, okay, Sarah, Sarah, whatever will be, will be. Don't argue with that. Let it go. And those beautiful, and maybe jasmine as well. Jasmine is usually put under the rulership of the moon, but she is so beautifully seductive. We have to put her into a Venus archetype too, and she's so cooling. Everything about her is soft and gentle, and it's like being under the moon instead of being under the fiery sun, so gentle. So all of those sort of soft cooling oils, also geranium, fantastic for the Aries disposition.
Sorry to interrupt for just a moment. I hope you're enjoying this episode of Sixth Sense. Now, you're probably getting rather excited about essential oils, and you might be tempted to go out and just grab some. But did you know the essential oil world is not regulated, and a lot of what it says on the label is not governed by anyone? A fun fact, which is not so fun, is that 75% of all oils that are sold as pure, natural, or organic lavender are not even from a plant. So how do you know what's real? Well, I went looking for that question a long time ago, and I found doTERRA to be a really reliable source of high quality essential oils. They don't just test their oils themselves, but at the end of the process, they have an independent third party verify and double check their oils to make sure that you are getting what nature intended purely from the plant. They also source where nature intended the plants to grow as well. If you want to grab hold of some essential oils from doTERRA, then I offer a discount code, and this is available no matter where you are in the world. Now, I don't want everyone to get essential oils. I want everyone to use essential oils. So when you become one of my customers, you get access to me and my VIP education platforms, ongoing discounts, ongoing freebies, live classes in all time zones all around the world, and so much more. So if you're interested in getting some essential oils that you know are really from nature, and this is important not only physically, but metaphysically as well, please reach out in the link. I guess with my first two oil choices with the green mandarin and the ginger, everyone has their superpower. And for Aries, it is that courageousness and that adventurous, and those two oils are to bring that out. So that's in what I would call a balanced Aries nature. But when we go into what I refer to as an unbalanced Aries nature, this is where I think kind of where your head's at is where I'm kind of in agreement as well. So, one of the key attributes of the Aries energy, if we think back about the emotional spectrum of a 0 to 7-year-old, they pretty much have 2 to 3 different emotions. What are they? Happy, sad, and angry. And so, with that anger, there are some really great oils to make them cool that down when they are too fiery, too bold, not kind of going into the depth. And you could go with something like vetiver, but I've really landed on probably the best choice, I think, is Copaiba. So Copaiba being a resin essential oil, we know physically it's used to calm both the body and the mind as well, so it soothes that way. But because it's a resin oil rather than a root oil, which just slows you right down, it also brings on a bit of introspection. And like you said, this idea of plowing headfirst into things, I think the Copaiba calms you, soothes you, but also says kind of gets a bit of thinking before acting, a bit of empathy and thinking about how this will impact other people. There is an Aries tendency to, as a 0 to 7-year-old, their concerns are what? Themselves. And what else? Themselves. And so Copaiba does kind of bring that more introspective side about, hold on, what are the implications of this approach in that type of way? So that's a really nice one for them to work for that calming, introspective, considerate, open-minded, critical thinking kind of aspect that I think Aries can bring in when they are a little bit unbalanced. The other one I would also bring in, anger is a definite. You'd say of all the fuses, Aries has one of the shortest. Fire signs are renowned for being the most hot-headed, but whereas Leo is counteracted by that big-heartedness and kind of maybe being a bit overly concerned with what people think about them. And Sagittarius is already kind of, I guess, a bit more philosophical in their approach to life. Aries sometimes can just fly off the handle in that way. And so this is where, eucalyptus could be an option. Very cooling. You mentioned geranium before, lovely, especially from a metaphysical aspect of the liver, being really good for supporting the liver where anger can be stored. But the one that I settled on as probably the best one for them would be cardamom. Now, what I love about cardamom, we love it for the respiratory system, we love it for the digestive system, we love it for the circulatory system. Why? Because it gets things flowing. And when you think about passion and anger, I've talked about this before, but they're both fiery emotions. The difference, anger doesn't have an outlet and it comes exploding out like a volcano. Whereas passion, it has an outlet and it flows. And I've found time and time again, cardamom is really, really great for helping anger or fiery energy that doesn't have an outlet find an outlet. So then working with cardamom can be really beneficial in that way when they are a little bit unbalanced, when they are getting a bit fiery. If that's kind of long held anger and older Aries, then yeah, bring in geranium. Or if they just need to cool down, a few drops of eucalyptus in the shower floor and a cold shower might settle them down. But I think from a deeper level, cardamom would be really good for them. So does that make sense how when they're unbalanced, I kind of want to counteract those too much fire, but we don't also want to dampen that fire too much and go, well, just can you not be more like a Cancerian and calm down?
Cancerians don't calm down. We go into a mood.
True.
um, what I think is really fascinating is sometimes you can see the pattern going across the mind, body, spirit of an oil, and particularly with Copaiba, we can see that's true. So you're talking about how good it is for like fiery nature and calming down. And we know that when it is in the body, it's interacting with the CB2 receptor in the endocannabinoid system, which has three functions, which are immunity, pain, and inflammation. So we can almost look and go, okay, so there's a biological way that this is working through the spiritual aspect of the oil. The same applies for geranium. I think geranium is such an important oil for Arians. To be honest, I think it's probably the most important oil for anybody, except for maybe lavender, which I call it the gateway drug to aromatherapy. But geranium is so good at working on supporting the adrenals. And if you think about the nature of this toddler that you're describing, how they are go, 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 and how they have this fiery disposition that means that they will always think that things are more urgent, more annoying, more vital than other signs will be. That means that their nervous system is always kind of a step ahead of everybody else's. And so when you're thinking about what the nervous system does, it's continually saying, send out more adrenaline all of the time, send out more cortisol all of the time. And so the adrenals don't really have any support from the rest of the body. If they are in overdrive, eventually what will happen is they will become exhausted and there's nothing to back them up. So exhaustion in the adrenals is a seriously bad condition. So anything that you can do to support that is helpful. And one of the best oils to do that is geranium. So yeah, extremely good for somebody who is of that disposition. The other reason that I use geranium a lot in clinical practice is for issues to do with the circulation. And Aries and Mars rule the blood and they rule the fire in the body. Actually, they rule the head. Mars rules the head, the face, the ears. So all things can have like a tendency to be dodgy. And those who know my work will be able to say, oh, how funny. She's Aries rising and she's got dodgy blood because mine does clot very easy. I'm a thrombophiliac. That's what caused problems to my lungs. And actually how that came about was working in a job that was so stressful. When the adrenals become drained, what they do is draw resources from the liver. And as you quite rightly say, that is where anger is stored. And so oils that support the hepatic system, like eucalyptus, like rosemary, like chamomile, we see all of these things cross referencing we're just looking at it from a different point of view to how we would. Those same oils come up over and over again. So yeah, geranium is so important for adrenal support. But yeah, long term, anything you can do to support the liver is helpful. Like I say, chamomile, eucalyptus, rosemary, all of those are really good. And those of you who watch my work a lot will say, oh, how funny she's mentioning rosemary. Yeah, I don't like rosemary because rosemary is that like alpha. She has that alpha energy that bosses everybody about. don't like anybody that bosses me about. I'm the boss. So it's kind of that same alpha energy coming through. It's really interesting how when you start to change a perspective to medical astrology, you're like, oh, wow, that's so interesting to see that reflected.
So are you saying basically anyone who's Aries or has a lot of Aries energy, looking at and being a bit more conscious of that part of the body would be a really important thing to do because that can be where issues come up, and the oils you've listed would help with that?
For sure. And the chances are they might not even need to think about it. They might go, oh, that's so weird. That's what I already have. Because you do have dispositions towards things. And yeah, so in the same way that you would have a tendency to be more fiery if you've got a lot of Mars energy, which obviously people who've got a lot of planets in Aries will have that, but also you will have like a biological disposition towards a weakness. And in homeopathy, they see things slightly differently, but they have a name for this inherited disposition, and that is miasm. That you're born with an inherited disposition towards things, and of course, science now says, yeah, that's genetics, but you can definitely see it in specific signs. So, for example, people who have got who are Virgoans, you might notice that they've got really big shoulders and rounded shoulders. You can see that people, and in the same way, when you look at it from the lens of Ayurveda, what you're seeing is like you're born into a disposition of excess pitta, that you have this fire, that you have this drive, you have this inner warmth to you, which can really tip fast over into too much warmth, too much fire, too much rage. So all of the old ways of looking at things, the humors, medical astrology, Ayurveda, TCM, they're all sort of talking about the same thing, that we have like this ideal uh, starting point, but how we're born means that we're actually slightly off kilter into a particular way. And things like Ayurveda, for example, will use particular foods and herbs to say, well, okay, you're going to go that way. So this is how we deal with that. And we bring it back. So while you're talking about these are really good oils to support, to bring out the best parts of an Aries, medical astrology says, yeah, but if you're born as an Aries, then this is kind of what we need to watch out for and have in our box ready for the things that are definitely going to play out with you, which are the rage, which are problems with the blood, problems with the face, problems with the head. Um, quite often, the people who have got a lot of Aries in their birth chart will have bad headaches, and like Zeus's hammer headaches. And it's of course because the internal fire has pushed it, and like the blood pressure's up, for example. Your blood pressure is a big thing with Aries, so having a bit of ylang ylang or a bit of clary sage. Incidentally, I read an interesting article the other day that said, yeah, ylang ylang seems to be better for men, clary sage seems to be better for women, so that like slight nuance. But knowing the more angry I get, the more chance I'm going to push my blood pressure up. Or likewise, if I feel depressed or as I get older, the chances are I might have varicose veins because that's an Aries disposition.
Yeah, really interesting. Just to clarify, when you're talking about the ylang ylang and the clary sage, that's the best oil for high blood pressure. Is that right?
Yes, sorry if I wasn't clear. Yes. Of course, we can't say reduces high blood pressure, but if you think that there's trials into ylang ylang for men, not only did it show that it reduced their blood pressure, their blood volume, but also fibrillations in the heart. So it settled the heart. And if you think about, right, I'm very angry, what does the body do when you're very angry? Your heart races, right? So we can see that of course, these dispositions will not only cause psychological turmoil, but they also have very profound effects on the physical body. So you get angry, you get inflamed, your blood pressure goes up. And yeah, as you say, Copaiba, absolutely fantastic for that because it's going to deal with the inflammation.
Now, a few things I will add about Aries, just as some general survival tactics for an Aries. One thing, they do thrive with sunlight. So it's really important. I guess like we kind of want the kids to go outside and play. And Aries is stuck inside, it's not beneficial for them. So although they are ruled, as you've mentioned, by Mars, Leo is ruled by the sun. It does seem as though Aries does really well with sunshine. Sleep, just like the like children need to have a nap. You'll find often, the two prototype Aries, which is my partner and my brother, sleep more than the average person. And that seems to be really good for them. So a sleep deprived Aries is like a sleep deprived 3-year-old, and we don't want to deal with either of them. The final thing is, if you ever need to motivate an Aries, make it a game or a competition. Tell them they can't do it, and they'll rise to the challenge because they always have that competitive game-like spirit. If you go, I bet you couldn't do the dishes in 5 minutes, watch them. And so that's a couple of tips I have for you as well. Anything you wanted to add about Aries in general or with aromatherapy, Liz, before we wrap up our conversation?
I think you hit the nail on the head there. The competitive nature can really push into a negative space with Aryan people, and particularly with Aryan women, because we have this feeling of being frightened of the world seeing that we're not the best at something. We have to be the best. And it can be kind of almost like psychopathic sometimes, how fastidious you become with detail oriented. And so that is kind of against what your Aries nature wants to do. Your Aries nature wants to push forward, yet the fear keeps saying, but what if I'm not good enough? What if there's somebody better than me? And so I think that is one of the places where chamomile can be so good, of just like, what will be, just let it go, just try it and see it. So though where you started off with the ginger is fantastic, and the mandarin is fantastic. This desire to step into one's power and to play and to experiment, but just be aware that at the back of your head the competitive nature can be, but what if somebody's better than me? And know that that is your Aries nature playing tricks with your mind.
One thing I do want to say as we wrap up this conversation on Aries in astrology is, when it comes to astrology, there is no good chart and bad chart. There is no zodiac sign better than the other. It's basically just like some of us have straight hair and some of us have curly hair. It's what you do with it that makes it count and makes you beautiful. Remember, we want to know what your experience with Aries is. Don't bag them too much in the comments, because there's some great people in our lives as well. But what essential oils, if you're an Aries, do you love? Or what have you used with Aries as well? Pop them in the comments below. And if you haven't hit that like and subscribe button while you're kind of meandering down there, do that as well. We'll be back next week when we're going to dive into another zodiac sign. You can probably work out who it is, but we'll see you then. Until then, take care and blessed be.
Bye bye.
I'm Elizabeth Ashley, UK Director for the National Association of Holistic Aromatherapy and founder of the Aromatic Mystery School, where essential oils meet the deeper, more mystical side of healing. Here you'll explore the spiritual, emotional and energetic dimensions of plants and learn how to weave them into your own rituals and well-being practices. If you're ready to work in a way that nourishes both your soul and your senses, join us at the Aromatic Mystery School. The link's right below.